Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme. Imagine you're a wealthy investor and someone promises you steady 10% returns year after year, no matter what the market does. Sounds too good to be true? That's exactly what Bernie Madoff sold for decades. Madoff ran the largest Ponzi scheme in history, stealing roughly $65 billion from thousands of investors. But here's the twisted part. He wasn't actually investing their money at all. New investors would hand him cash. He'd use that cash to pay the earlier investors their returns. Everyone thought they were getting rich, but it was just other people's money moving in circles. The scheme only collapsed in 2008 when the financial crisis hit, and too many people wanted their money back at once. Suddenly, there was nothing left to pay out. Madoff ended up sentenced to 150 years in prison, but most victims never got their money back. It's the perfect example of how a Ponzi works. As long as new money keeps flowing in, everyone's happy. The second it stops, the whole thing explodes.
Charles Ponzi and the postal reply kit.
Let's go back to where it all started.
Charles Ponzi, the guy the scam is named after.
In the 1920s, Ponzi promised investors a 50% return in just 45 days. His pitch sounded genius. He claimed he was buying international postal reply coupons cheaply in one country and selling them for profit in another. People loved him. They poured money. Within months, he was pulling in millions. Here's the problem. Ponzi wasn't actually trading coupons. He was just paying early investors with money from new investors. Classic scam. By the time authorities caught on, Ponzi had scammed people out of about $20 million, which would be hundreds of millions today. He went to prison, but his name became popular. Every scam that works this way, new money and old investors, is now called a Ponzi scam. MMM, Global Pyramid Scheme. Fast forward to the internet age. MMM was a Russian scheme that went global in the 2010s, hitting countries like South Africa, Nigeria, India, and beyond. The founder, Sergey Mavrodi, didn't even try to hide it. He openly called it a mutual aid fund where people help each other. You put money in, recruit others, and supposedly everyone wins. At its peak, millions of people joined, believing they'd get 30%, even 100% returns per month. But it was pure smoke and mirrors. No real investments, no products, just people's deposits funding withdrawals for earlier participants. When the flow of new members slowed down, the system froze accounts and eventually collapsed. Millions lost their savings. What made MMM especially dangerous was how it used social media and YouTube testimonials to lure everyday people in. It felt modern, tech-savvy, and trustworthy, but underneath, it was the same old Ponzi playbook with a digital facelift.
OneCoin cryptocurrency scam. Crypto promised to change the world, and scammers took full advantage. OneCoin launched in 2014, claiming to be the next Bitcoin. They sold educational packages that came with OneCoin tokens, promising massive future value. The founder, Ruja Ignatova, nicknamed the Crypto Queen, hosted flashy events, wore designer clothes, and convinced people they were getting in early on a revolution. By 2017, OneCoin had pulled in an estimated $4 billion from investors worldwide. But here's the kicker. OneCoin wasn't even a real cryptocurrency. There was no blockchain, no decentralized network, just a fake database they controlled. It was a Ponzi wrapped in crypto hype. Early investors got paid with money from new recruits, and everyone thought they were holding valuable coins. In 2017, Ruja disappeared. She's still missing today, likely hiding somewhere with billions. Authorities have been hunting her ever since, but for the millions who lost money, it's already too late.
Zeek Rewards online Ponzi. Zeek Rewards called itself a penny auction site, but it was really just another Ponzi hiding behind a business model. Between 2010 and 2012, the company convinced people to buy bids for online auctions and share ads online daily. In return, they'd earn a share of the company's profits. Sounds semi-legit, right? Not quite. The so-called profits weren't real. They were just recycling money from new investors. People weren't actually making money from auctions. They were being paid from the cash that others put in. At its peak, Zeek had around 900,000 investors and brought in roughly $850 million. Then the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission shut it down. The majority of participants lost everything. What made Zeek tricky was the illusion of a real business. There were auctions, there was a website, there were daily tasks. But strip all that away, and it was just the same scam. Old investors paid with new investors' money.
Stanford Financial Group, Allen. Stanford wasn't as famous as Madoff, but his Ponzi scheme was nearly as big. Through his company, Stanford Financial Group, he sold certificates of deposit from his bank in Antigua, promising unusually high interest rates that beat most U.S. banks. Investors trusted him. He had a global network, flashy offices, even sponsored cricket tournaments. But those high returns? Totally fake. Stanford was using new investors' deposits to pay interest to earlier ones. Behind the scenes, he was also funneling money into his own pockets, funding a lavish lifestyle with private jets and mansions. By the time it all unraveled in 2009, Stanford had stolen about $7 billion from roughly 30,000 investors across more than 100 countries. He was sentenced to 110 years in prison, but like most Ponzi victims, the people he scammed never fully recovered their losses. It proved once again that a polished reputation and a legitimate-looking business can hide one of the oldest tricks in the fraud playbook. So there you have it. 6 of the biggest Ponzi schemes in history. Different decades, different tactics, but the same core lie. Pay old investors with new investors' money and hope nobody notices until it's too late. The lesson? If someone promises you guaranteed high returns with little risk, run. Because in the real world, there's no such thing as easy money. And when the music stops, it's always the last ones who lose everything.